So, under Title 25, Statute 1502, Powers and Duties, Cooperation of Others, the specific powers and duties of the state police shall be to patrol the state highways and other important ways, especially outside the compact portion of cities and towns for the purpose of enforcing the law, and all laws relating to motor driven and horse drawn vehicles, and all rules and regulations in regard thereto, and of arresting all violators and prosecuting all offenders against the same. The state police shall aid the Department of Transportation in the enforcement of its rules and orders and permit regulations. In addition to these duties and powers, the chief and members of the state police are vested with the same powers and duties throughout the several counties of the state as sheriffs have in their respective counties to serve criminal processes, to investigate and prosecute violators of any law of this state, and to arrest the offenders thereof, and the same power and duty as sheriffs have to arrest without warrant and detain persons found violating or attempting to violate any other penal law of the state until a legal warrant can be obtained. As arresting officers or aides or witnesses in any criminal case, they shall be limited to the same fees as complaints under Title 15, Section 1363. Fees shall be taxed on a bill of cost and shall be paid promptly each month to the treasurer of state and accredited or credited to the general highway fund. They shall have the same rights as sheriffs to require aid in executing the duties of their office. They may serve any subpoenas, notices, and processes issued by the Secretary of State or the Department of Transportation under authority of law. They shall at all times be subject to the call of the governor or for emergency purposes at the governor's discretion. The state police, sheriffs, and deputy sheriffs, constables, city marshals, deputy marshals, and police officers of cities and towns shall, so far as possible, cooperate in the detection of crime, the arrest and prosecution of criminals, and the preservation of law and order throughout the state. The state police may provide patrol services to the Maine Turnpike. The chief of the state police may charge the Maine Turnpike Authority for these services. Revenues received are allocated for the purposes of funding the cost of patrolling the Maine Turnpike. Upon the request of a federal agency or other person, which, take in mind, these are separate jurisdictions, and they should not, like, state police are not allowed to enforce federal laws, just as well as the federal jurisdictions are not allowed to impede on state laws, if this makes sense. So the fact that this is written in Maine legislation should kind of raise some red flags. Upon the request of a federal agency or other person, the state police may provide assistance for public safety purposes only to the federal agency or other person. The chief of the state police may charge the various federal agencies or other persons for these services. Revenues received from these agencies and other persons must be allocated for the purpose of funding the cost of providing the services, and the state police shall report to the Joint Standing Committee of the legislator having jurisdiction over criminal justice matters no later than January 15th of each year concerning the assistance provided to federal agencies and other persons during the previous calendar year. The report must contain information about the types of services provided and the number of services and the fees charged by the chief of the state police. PL 2001 C 483, Statute 1, AMD. And I believe PL means public law and AMD means amended. The chief of the state police may assign one or more state police officers to provide full-time or part-time police services to a municipality or to no more than 3 adjoining municipalities. So it says or to no more than 3 adjoining municipalities lacking an organized police department if the municipality or municipalities pay the cost of training, compensation including wages and fringe benefits, equipment and other expenses of the assigned state police officer or officers. The chief of the state police shall continue to exercise supervision and direction over a state police officer who is assigned to provide police services to a municipality or municipalities. The chief of the state police and the municipality or municipalities are authorized to enter into agreements and contracts for police services for a period not exceeding 3 years per agreement or contract. Revenues received from a municipality must be allocated for the purposes of funding the cost of providing the police services. PL 2005 C53 Statute 1 AMD. Municipal and county jails shall at all times be available for detention of persons arrested by state or any other law enforcement officers. In those municipalities where full-time supervision of the jail is not provided by the municipality, full responsibility for the safekeeping and welfare of any person detained shall rest solely with the arresting officer. So, when George Floyd ended up dead, and anybody would be like, he was on drugs. So does that alleviate all his constitutional protected rights, especially under the color of law? He was not doing anything when he was approached by the officer in the car, and then the officer that was arresting him wasn't taking time to truly listen to George Floyd, which I realized that when I watched the videos. There's another individual who recently, well, he wasn't recently, it happened, I think, 2015, but in the Lahootie Police Department of Colorado, Sergeant Vincent Fraker and Officer John McMillan went to Donovan Duran and, you know, basically went to an individual that was disgruntled, drunk, intoxicated, obviously. Police officers, he wanted to be arrested and kept saying, arrest me, but they didn't do that. They waited till other incidences happened of where they could arrest him. They put him in the back of the cop car, and when they opened up the door, he was taking his handcuffs from behind him and putting them under his butt, and then trying to slip them under his feet. And then that's when they grabbed him and threw him onto the ground, smashed his face, causing him to break his neck and instantly paralyze him. And then they kept telling him to get up off the ground, and like he wasn't now a victim at this point, and then drug him into a wheelchair, rolled him into the hospital, threw him onto a bed, handcuffed him, and left him there until a doctor came in. So my question was he guilty of a crime when the incident happened? Or was he allegedly accused and was arrested to see a judge and decide his innocence? So when the officers arrested him and then threw him on the ground and broke his neck, was he guilty of a crime at that particular instance? Or was he being arrested because allegedly he was guilty of a crime that then needed to be seen in front of a judge so we can have a proper hearing, whether it was a civil case or a case of, where you pretty much go into a regular traffic court. There's no jury. You have a hearing. They give you your sentence right then and there that you might get probation, whatever. The point is that you go in and you say, guilty, not guilty, no contest. So right then and there, you're still innocent, right? So when they broke his neck, especially when they killed George Floyd, was he innocent at that time? And this is what police officers need to understand, okay? So, because it says municipal and county jail shall at all times be available for detention and purposes of persons arrested by the state or any local enforcement. And then it says, basically, supervision of the jail is not provided by a municipality. Full responsibility for the safekeeping and welfare of any person detained shall rest solely on the arresting officer. Expense of any municipality or any damage to the jail resulting from the use of its jail by any arresting officer shall be reimbursed a municipality by the law enforcement agency for which the arresting officer is acting. PL 1989 C 757 AMD. County commissioners of all the several counties. By the way, several means severable. Severed. It means individual. It means standing on its own. So when it's talking about the several counties, it means individual separate counties are authorized to provide and pay for liability insurance protection for the keeper of the county jail. So who's the keeper? The Bureau of State Police is authorized to establish two state police sergeant project positions to be temporarily assigned to the Maine Criminal Justice Academy for each training class at the academy. And I discovered inside there too as well another description of what a law enforcement is officer under 29A, and it says again, a law enforcement officer means an officer or special investigator. Okay, it's under 30, under 29A in the definition. Okay, it's 29A statute 101 definitions. Go to 30. I apologize. 30. Law enforcement officer. Law enforcement officer means a person who, by virtue of public employment, is vested by law with a duty to maintain public order or to make arrests for crime, whether that duty extends to all crimes or is limited to specific crimes. Also, a law enforcement officer means an officer or special investigator of the Bureau of Revenue Services, but only when the officer or special investigator is engaged in enforcement of tax laws under this title or Title 36. So officers are kind of working as what I see, either a for-profit motive, which is obviously the police department and its organizations. I don't think that police officers solely believe that this is what they're doing. This just kind of ends up falling in their laps. And I can imagine that the more that I'm trained to read these statutes and then have to analyze people, whether they're following these statutes and these codes, is anybody innocent to the officer while seeing somebody violate these infractions? And this is another thing I found in there too. Like, they will say that a traffic infraction is committing a crime. Well, I actually found in 29A statute 103.1 traffic infraction. A traffic infraction is not a crime. The penalty for a traffic infraction may not be deemed for any purpose a penal or criminal punishment. 2, jury trial. There is no right to trial by jury for a traffic infraction. And then it says 3, exclusive penalty. The exclusive penalty for a traffic infraction is a fine not less than $25, nor more than $500 unless specifically authorized, or suspension of a license, or both. 4, standard of proof. The burden of proof that a traffic infraction has occurred is on the state and must be established by a standard of preponderance of the evidence. So when you think about that, basically, you never committed a crime. And, you should let an officer be aware of that, of his own codes, so he may de-escalate himself from trying to rip your door open. Maybe you might have your window down 1 inch. That's enough for him to slip his fingers through, grab the window, and pull it and shatter it. They'll put their gloves on. That means they mean business. And from that point forward, I do give advice to let them follow through with their job, even if it is abusing you. And keep letting them know that you're not resisting arrest, that you're doing everything under duress, and ask them, do you equate violence and coercion with consent? Because you're governed by consent. In 29A Statute 105, enforcement. 1, authority to stop motor vehicle if a law enforcement officer has reasonable and articulable suspicion to believe that a violation of law has taken or is taking place. That officer, if the officer is in uniform, may stop a motor vehicle for the purpose of A, arresting the operator for a criminal violation, B, issuing the appropriate written process for a criminal or civil violation or a traffic infraction, or C, questioning the operator or occupants. 2, scope of inspection. Now this is big to me, because 2 says a law enforcement officer who has stopped a motor vehicle. Now remember, we were talking about the powers and duties and cooperation of others within what it means for a police officer on Title 25, Chapter 191, Statute 1502. 502, and it goes down towards these motor vehicle stops that they have the authority to do this. Well, it is technically a violation of the Fourth Amendment right. And again, this is where now you need to ask a police officer, is he actually defending you? But this is big because we're going to go into a few things here. Scope of inspection. A law enforcement officer who has stopped a motor vehicle pursuant to subsection 1 may, okay, and I actually need to go back real quick for a second. Let's do this together because I actually left out a part that I couldn't even believe I left out. So we're going to do it over again. 29A Statute 105, Enforcement. 2. Scope of inspection. A law enforcement officer who has stopped a motor vehicle pursuant to subsection 1 may demand and inspect driver's license, certificate of registration, permits, and identification numbers of the motor vehicle. A state police officer who is trained pursuant to the motor carrier. So we're going to say this again. A state police officer who is trained pursuant to the motor carrier safety rules of the motor carrier safety regulations of the United States Department of Transportation may demand and inspect the driver's record of duty status and medical examiner's certificate if applicable. So let's go to the word motor carrier, okay? A motor carrier means a contract carrier, a common carrier or private carrier or passenger by motor vehicle. License means an operator license or driver's license or other license, permit, or privilege to operate a motor vehicle. License includes, but is not limited to, a non-resident operating privilege and the privilege of a person to apply for or obtain a license or permit to operate a motor vehicle. So let's look up motor vehicle real quick. So, by the way, driver falls in with, so vehicle means a device for conveyance of person. A person is another big word, but or property on a way. Vehicles does not include conveyances propelled or drawn by human power or used exclusively on railroad tracks or snowmobiles as defined in Title 12, Section 3001. I think it's 13001, or an electric personal assistive mobility device. So, we're going to go back here to driver. Has the same meaning, this is 22, as an operator as defined in subsection 48. So then you go to operator. In 48, it says means an individual who drives or is in control of a vehicle. 25, for hire transportation. For hire transportation means the transportation for compensation of passengers, freight, or merchandise not owned by the carrier. Now we're going into motor carrier now, not driver. Then we go into owner. 50. Owner means a person holding the title to a vehicle or having exclusive right to the use of the vehicle for a period of 30 days or more. So he's not the owner. He's really technically having permission or exclusive right to use the vehicle. That's it. But because we sign over everything, we lose it as for our own ownership. We don't have a lodial title. So 83, traffic. Traffic means pedestrians, ridden or herded animals, vehicles, bicycles, or other conveyances, either singly or together, using public way for travel. So then the traffic infraction means any violation, which means loss, injury, or harm, of any provision of this title, or any rules established under this title not expressly defined as a crime or as a civil violation, and otherwise not punishable by incarceration. Then why do they arrest you for these specific things? The term traffic violation, as used in any public or private law of this state or in any rule adopted pursuant to any law of this state, has the same meaning and effect. So when you look at driver, vehicle, transportation, these are all things that a police officer is to be trained in when dealing with a motor carrier. So if you're not operating as a 14th Amendment citizen or a state citizen, a citizen of the state, yeah, because you're a citizen of the state, not a state citizen. So when, we'll just say 14th Amendment slave, U.S. citizen. When you're a U.S. citizen, you're a person, which means you're a legal entity. That driver's license is the proof of it. And the driver's license is the proof that you're operating, conducting commercial activity on the highways. Okay? And in fact, it even says a license required under 29A statute 1251. 6, exemption. Okay? So it says the following people are exempt from the license requirements of this chapter. A non-resident who is 16 years of age or older and has in that person's possession a valid license or learner's permit issued by the person's state or province. The next one down says a non-resident operator shall adhere to all restrictions applied to the license or learner's permit issued by that person's state or province. So a non-resident seems to be exempt from needing a license. And then I found more. Title 29A, Statute 156, Reciprocal Agreements with New Hampshire. Well, I found a bill within the New Hampshire legislative codes under HB 507-FN-A-local is the restatement of the right to travel in New Hampshire. And if there's a reciprocal agreement with New Hampshire, can I use that reciprocal legislative statute recognized as a House bill here in Maine for the time being? Then you go to Title 29A 109, provisions not applicable to non-residents, because we just described the exemption under 29A statute 1251, what it means to have a license, and now we're going into the provisions of this title on registration of vehicles and operators. And operators' licenses do not apply to a non-resident owner or operator if that person has complied with the provisions of the laws on registration and licensing of the jurisdiction of residents. So if you're a resident, then you're pretty much screwed. And B, a non-resident student enrolled in a university, college, or school within the state as long as that student possesses a valid registration and license issued by the jurisdiction of legal residence. And then the next one down, very carefully and discreetly thrown in there, is the exemptions from registration of this subsection apply only to the non-commercial use and operation of vehicles in this state. So right then and there, I've heard an officer say that if you don't have a vehicle registered, then that's a arrestable offense. But here under their own code, Title 29A 109, it says that we do not have to register our vehicle if it's not being used for commercial purposes. So then it says, we're going to the next one where it says Title 29A, Statute 109, reciprocity, which is the registration and licensing law of this state. 3. Limitations. The vehicle may not be operated commercially at a site within this state or used for transportation of persons, merchandise, or materials from one point in this state to another point in this state unless registered in this state or exempt from the registration by a written reciprocity agreement as provided in this section, except that a non-resident owned semi-trailer drawn by truck trailer registered in this state is permitted to transport merchandise in intrastate commerce. So essentially what it's saying is that a vehicle may not be operated commercially at this site within this state or used for transportation of purposes, merchandise or materials from one point in this state to another point in this state unless registered. So if you're going to operate in a commercial capacity for hire and transportation use of the highways, your vehicle must be registered and you must have a driver's license or a motor carrier's license. and be well trained on those attributes in law and the functions to operate, well, what they call a motor vehicle rather than a private automobile. So we're going to check this out. So I'm going to read it specifically. 109, reciprocity. Reciprocity. 1. Provisions not applicable to non residents. The provisions of this title on registration of vehicles and operators' licenses do not apply to. And then it says A, which I just covered, B, which is the one with the student, and then the next one is the exemptions from registration of this subsection apply only to the non commercial use and operation of vehicles in this state. So if you are being accused that your vehicle has to be registered, you mention Title 29A, Statute 109, reciprocity, and tell them to look right underneath B and how you're a non commercial use. Now, again, we're starting to see a rise of police violence for people who choose not to comply to what I'm starting to see is more of extortion. Okay? The legislator writes the laws, they're out there, what, enforcing the laws. So did the people write those laws? Or where did these laws come from? Is this to govern safety or is this to govern commercial activity while they preserve its dichotomy, if you will, its functioning, while still benefiting and creating revenue off commercial activity itself? So turning rights into feasible ways to collect revenue. When we just covered what a law enforcement officer does. And to gain the respect of the people is to recognize those rights. And when they are being enforced or invoked, to not have that trigger a police officer to where they become violent or coercive and put the civilian under duress, which is a violation of USC 18, 241 and 242. Conspiracy to go against rights in the color of law, and deprivation of rights in the color of law, and under 42 USC 1983, which is called 1983 action. And if you mention those while you're being molested, and it's like I said to that police officer in the recording there, we don't hang out with each other on Friday night. So if a police officer is encountering you, you don't need to talk to them. They're not your friend at that particular time. They're making an investigation. So therefore, your best bet is to shut your mouth. Invoke your Fifth Amendment right and your Fourth Amendment right, which is the right to not have to deal with any kind of unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant. And if they're talking to you, I strongly suggest you request the warrant. If they don't have a warrant, then they're fishing. They're detaining you, investigating you. You ask simply, am I being detained? And I wish to invoke all my fundamentally protected rights that you swore an oath to protect and serve. So, I'm not going to help you with your investigation, sir. And then you could proceed to ask the police officer if you're under arrest, and if so, to read you your rights because you are in a custodial arrest. And he's going to try to avoid all that because, again, he's fishing on a little hunting expedition. We're doing a little door-to-door explorer here. And some Blues Clues, if you will. And this is where your best bet is to pull out your phone, document the whole entire thing, get him to admit why he's pulling you over or encountering you, and start getting his name, his badge number, ask if he's got a bond, is he personally insured, is he ready to have a lien put out against him, is he willing to lose his qualified immunity by abusing his authority and to usurp or to... Because, again, I have nothing against the police. It's, do they have something against us and our rights when we invoke them? And, you know, some of these conversations I have with police officers, well, like you, are you trying to entrap me in my own language so that um, I can convert my own rights into a crime, and then choose when to, because this is called self-governing and self-determinization, and for an individual like me, I mean, if I'm traveling down the road and it's speed limit 15 miles an hour, but it feels more like a 30, or a 40 miles an hour, can I operate in my own discretion, especially if no one's around? And these are the kind of questions that we need to ask ourselves based on what basis are we allowed to be free. And then, I mean, while the Department of Transportation, what's the definition of transportation? So here's transport: to carry, convey, from one place to another. Transportation: carrying or sending to another place or country. May include other modes of moving or removing property than by carrying as that word is ordinarily understood. Thus, it is Thus, it will include taking petroleum from one place to another by means of pipes laid underground. And the Interstate Commerce Act of February 4th, 1887 includes all instrumentalities of shipping or carriage. See Commerce, Text 2. Sending a convict to another country as punishment. Then we have travel. He has no precise or technical meaning when used without limitation. Its primary and general import is to pass from one place to place, whether for pleasure, instruction, business, or health. The length of the journey or its continuance does not destroy the character of the occupation. 1. The purpose for which towns are compelled to construct highways and bridges and keep them in repair is to promote the comfort and convenience and ensure the safety of travelers, persons who have lawful occasion to pass over them upon business or for pleasure. Travelers, and this connection is to be interpreted in the light of knowledge common to all gained from observation and experience as to the manner in which people are accustomed to use highways. That is to be so interpreted as to permit a convenient and beneficial use. And a statute giving a right of action for an injury caused by defects in a highway. Traveler means everyone, whatever his age or condition, who has occasion to pass over the highway for any purpose of business, convenience, or pleasure, irrespective of the motive or object with which a way is thus used. It may be not unlawful, not then a gymnast performing feats, nor a boy sliding down a hill. Walking for exercise is not traveling. Within the meaning of a law allowing a person traveling to carry concealed weapons, the traveling must be on a journey, beyond the ordinary habit, business, or duties of the person and beyond the circle of his friends or acquaintances. 3. One who has been carried by steamboat and walks 8 miles from the landing to his home is not, while walking within the meaning of a policy of insurance, traveling by public or private conveyance. 4. As to what is traveling within the meaning of Sunday laws, see Sunday. It's interesting. This is the Anderson Dictionary of 1889. So we're going to look up the word violation as well. Violation, injury, infringement, breach of right, duty or law, ravishment, seduction. The statute 25 EDW.123, which is the Roman numeral 3, ST.5, apostrophe C.2, enacts that any person who shall violate the king's companion shall be guilty of high treason. This is the word traffic in a Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Traffic, commerce, trade, sale or exchange of merchandise, bills, money, and the like. The passing of goods or commodities from one person to another for an equivalent in goods or money. Senior verse Ratterman, 44 Ohio, ST.673, apostrophe 11 N.E.321, semicolon, fine verse Morin. 74. FLA dot 417, comma 77 SO dot 533 apostrophe 533 538, comma Bruno versus US CCA Mass 289 F 649 655 Kroger Grocery and Baking Company versus Square SCHWER 36 Ohio APP 512 173 and E 633. The subjects of transportation on a route as persons or goods, the passing to and fro of persons, animals, vehicles, or vessels along a route of transportation as long a street, canal, etc. Traffic regulations. Prescribed rules of conduct to promote the orderly and safe flow of traffic. Now we're going to go into transportation. Transportation. The removal of goods or persons from one place to another by a carrier. Railroad Company vs. Pratt. 22 Wall. 133. Second, 22nd. So it'll be 22 L.ED.827. Interstate Commerce COMN vs. Brinson. 14S.CT.1125 154 US 447 38 L.ED.1047 I believe Gloucester GLOUCESTER Ferry Company versus Pennsylvania 5S.CT.826 114 US 196 29 L.ED 158. And transport says to carry or convey from one place to another. Traveler, one who passes from place to place, whether for pleasure, instruction, business, or health. Lockett vs. State, 47, ALA dot 45, semicolon 10, C dot B dot N dot S dot 429. Here's what driver is in the 4th edition Black's Law Dictionary. One employed in conducting or operating a coach, carriage, wagon, or other vehicle with horses, mules, or other animals, or a bicycle, tricycle, or motor car. Though not a street railroad car, a person actually doing driving, whether employed by owner to drive or driving his own vehicle. Wallace vs. Wood, 340 MO.452, 102 S.W.2D 91, 97 period. Driving. To urge forward, under guidance. Compelled to go in a particular direction, urge onward, and direct the course of. Reasonable suspicion. This means that police suspect that you are about to commit a crime involving a victim or damage to property. Reasonable suspicion is stated that permits police to stop you. Probable cause. This means that it is more likely than not that a crime involving a victim or damage to property has already been committed, and police require probable cause to make an arrest. When a police officer stops you, you are under arrest, at which point you have a right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment and Fourth Amendment. The officer will lie to you and tell you that you are not under arrest and begin his discovery process not permitted by law. An illegal arrest is assault and battery, and a citizen has a right to defend themselves. But I will tell you that if you're going to go up against a police officer, you don't have much in your arsenal to defend you. When a police officer is making an arrest, if you choose to resist arrest, he will use that as means to continue his incarceration, if you will. So, I strongly suggest when dealing with an officer to calmly always invoke your rights, remind the officer to take a step back for a second and to analyze the laws. Do they actually apply to you? What authority is he operating under? Is he under a private jurisdiction? Are you, how does he know that he has the authority under you by not really deeming your status? If he doesn't know your status, how does he know that he has the authority to convict you of anything or to, um, place an accusation on you that you have committed a crime, allegedly? To then issue a citation or a presentment, which is basically a charge of a tax that you have committed a crime. And I strongly suggest people to continue to do their research, um, even research everything I'm saying to see whether it's true or not. I might have got a number wrong or something, okay? I'm not perfect, but I definitely aim to, achieve perfection as we all do. And sometimes perfection is accepting that some things in life just ain't fucking perfect. Basically. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time. God bless you. If you found this information educational, if you found it informative, if you found it to benefit you in any way, please hit the like button, share it among your friends, and tune in next time. Hit that subscribe bell. Love you guys. Take care.